Well, hello everyone. Here to show you right here. I'm talking about for disability forms right here, and you see right here that this right here will be an example right here of like another way of how you want to call it a note. And a lot of times it sure seems that way that when we do speak about disability, a lot of times that usually means is toward it. It's like a letter or any source of application that you're filling out just to be able to state and prove that you're disabled, right? About your disability. And so that's why it sure seems that way that every time we do speak about disability a lot of times, but it sure seems that way that when we do speak about disability most of the time, it's like, yeah, that it's another way of how you want to cause this toward that, yeah, services that you're going to be applying for. And let's just say if you're going to be filling out an application, or if you're just, it's supposed to be like a permission slip to where if you're going to be using it, just to be able to apply for a job, or maybe during a time that maybe if you're in the Boy Scouts or something like that, like yeah, just to be able to receive services, a disability service, and type of for combinations, right? So a lot of times it's like when we do speak about disability paperwork, it sure seems that way that yeah, it's another way of how you want to call this toward it, yeah, that people are able to people are going to give you a source of that source of attention, or if anything more time. And a lot of times that's usually what it is that yeah, they'll go ahead and it's another it's just another way of stating as toward it, just to give you a little bit more time than usual compared to everybody else, just to be able to work on something. And that also could even mean as toward it, even if well able to learn new things, right? And so it sure seems that way that every time we do mention about disability, though, and want to know that yeah, that if you were to actually look at any source of permission slip or anything like that, and your warrant were, yeah, that you read if it's supposed to be maybe what you call a handwritten note or something like that from a doctor or something like that. But at the time, you always want to know too that whenever you do think about disability, though, it's like, yeah, that it's another way of how you want to cause this tour. That yeah, that it's like it's a form of explaining what your diagnosis is. And let's just say that diagnosis is maybe going to be about is that the things based on your medical for medical reasons. And also it can also be about to what the doctors are basically are saying is toward it. Tell your employer or anybody that who's in charge of that event and all that, and like, yeah, if it's for class purposes or for employment purposes, that you would use the letters, for that disability letters, right? And so half the time it sure seems that way. Yeah, a lot of times it's most of the time it's about the attention, right? Like you say, yeah, well, really, that for the most part, that then when we do speak about disability paperwork a lot of times, and like, yeah, there are, how that is, that if the teacher or the manager or whoever that's going to be watching you work, and a lot of times they're going to say is that the only reason maybe why that they're going to be nice to you is because that they received that letter from the disability department or something like that, or yeah, from the disability center, and saying is toward yeah, to give this person a little bit more time, just to be able to do their work. And so it's another way of how you want to call it, like yeah, it's power to your ability toward it, allow you more time just to be able to complete the process and all that, right? And so half the time you always want to know too that yeah, to be patient, wait patiently, to go easy and be patient with the person. But it sure seems that way that that when we do speak about disability, though, that how many of us are maybe going to even know exactly what this would usually means right here, toward if you're going to be reading a paper right here, a form, and then they're going to say that it's going to say something like the details about your diagnosis, and also about the information that we collect just to determine about what you're based on your medical status and everything. So it's like so usually about I would say about maybe 150 or so characters long is usually what I see. And yeah, so there's going to be something that's going to be talking about is toward you go ahead and fill out like if it's supposed to be an application or something like that. But whenever you're going to be reviewing this right here, and I want to know if it's supposed to be like a form, just to explain what your disability diagnosis is and everything, and knowing about what was approved and all that, and but still but it sure seems that way that when we do speak about disability, though, that there are times to where that maybe that if the work if the work starts speeding up, or maybe if there is any sorts of delay. So like everybody else might even say that this part right here of the application would be like maybe page one. Page 1 and 3 right here. So like let's just say at this portion right here of the letter is like say if this person claims to be disabled, have a disability, for sure that you should at least read and understand, knowing about what their condition is, and knowing that they cannot handle a lot of those other objectives they come in place and all. And so that's why it sure seems that way, that whenever you first start working on a task, that there's about maybe 5 different things that the management or somebody's wanting done within certain timing, right? And sometimes it's like people might say that 5 hours and 5 days or so that you had to be able to work on something. And so it sure seems that way, that if we, I know like everybody else would say is to where that there's a difference between, what you're working out and, of course, for what's really going on. But at the time, it sure seems that way that whenever you do think about your disability, a lot of times, it sure seems that way that, it's another way of how do you want to call this, is the power to give you that ability for more time, right? But let's just say that everybody else might say that really that's really up to you, but still that but how often do we really want to think about that, to where whenever it comes to disability, right, to where that your choice is yours. So a lot of times you want to know too that whenever it comes to disability, though, disability paperwork and any other sorts of disability diagnosis, though, so if you were to say something like that, to where that your choice is yours whenever it comes to disability. So a lot of times it's like, that would doctors and maybe nurses even say that to their patients that those who do have a disability, that they could think about that, to where that all these other objectives, that all these responsibilities, and all these other tasks and everything from before, that you didn't think that you were going to be able to accomplish everything. And so that's why it seems like that why do you think that that the manager would let you know that okay, well, that's up to you if you want to go ahead and work on this, or if you want to work on that, or that's not required. That's really your choice if you want to do this or do the work on that. But so it sure seems that way, that when we do speak about disability, though, that just think it is toward it. It's the ability for more time, but then on the other hand, it sure seems that way that when we do speak about disability a lot of times, and people might even say that that's supposed to be another way of what you call the power and ability, toward it. That don't be so hard on the person, while they're working. And so they're the power and the ability right here. So I'll go and put that right there. Power and I'm going to put and right here. Power and ability. the power and then the ability. So pretty much is that whenever you do think about the power and ability about it, that you're also thinking is toward that if you had a doctor write any source of doctor's excuse, maybe to a manager or somebody who's in charge of something, and let's just say that your power and your ability toward it, knowing that hey, that don't be so hard on a person, all right? You go ahead and let them work for what needs to be done and all that, but still that. But how are we necessarily going to maybe think as toward it? Talk about for treatment, treatment of a kind, and like everybody else might say that due to your disability though, that are you going to maybe think about that is toward a treatment of a kind, to where that not so difficult. Not so difficult right here. And so that's why it sure seems that way. That every time I think about disability, though, and it's like, it's just another way of saying is toward it. You can go ahead and give you that special treatment. That special treatment toward it. Don't be so hard on the person, and you go ahead and let them work at the way that they like to work and where they're comfortable working and everything. So half the time you want to know too that most of the time it sure seems that way that whenever you do receive a disability, like a student accommodations, whenever you do receive a disability though, it sure seems that way that that most of what you do is optional. It's not required. But like I say, your choice is yours. And a lot of times I'll even tell everybody here too that. And it seems like that's usually the case, and that's usually really only whenever you do put in a lot of hard work. Of course, whenever you put in a lot of hard work for what had to be done, of course. But still, that when we do speak about disability, a lot of times, that it sure seems that way. That how often are you really going to hear that choice is yours? Just because the fact that. Okay, you got to put in a little bit more of the hard work, just before that choice is yours, toward it. You can go ahead and do this how you like and do that how you like, and so it sure seems that way. That every time we do think about disability, though, that a lot of times it seems like that the things that you like about receiving service, your special services and all that, and so really that, and I know that these are just notes here, but still that, but talk about for special that, what is so special about that? Well, what I mean by is that that special to where that there's a gift, there's an award and there's a gift, that later on, and that sorts of special, but special treatment and all that. But a lot of times it sure seems that way. That every time we do speak about disability right here, and people might say that you go ahead and this right here is supposed to be like maybe 150 characters right there, just to explain to the person, to the company that about your disability and then the things for what you can handle, and this right here is supposed to allow it to give you more time just to be able to complete a job, to do the job, and then of course, knowing about don't be so hard on the person, and you have right here is a spot right here where you can sign, right? So it sure seems that way that that every time we do speak about disability though, and like you want to know too that whenever it comes to signatures though, it's like you sign and date something, and you want to know too that whenever it comes to I'll go ahead and start right here. But anyway, I'm just showing everybody here about the signature, but still, you have right here of talking about the spot where you would actually sign and date right there, and it's like, say, most of those applications for sure. I'm like, most of those applications for sure are going to say that, yeah, well, we ask you to go ahead and sign a date right here, so that way, Mike, so yeah, put the date right there, and so it's like, yeah, so I'm like, so every time we do think about signing a document, and of course how that works, but yeah, you usually, if you're going to be e-signing a document, there's usually a check box at about right here where you would be able to the e-sign, and so it's like, yeah, there's a tab where usually you'll be able to e-sign a document on it, but at the time you want to know too that with most of the time with those disability papers, though, that whenever you do think about them, it sure seems that way. That yeah, that it's supposed to give you the power and the ability toward it. Yeah, that don't be so hard. And so, and then I know that one thing that my teacher used to always say too, that don't make it so hard. Not so hard. Don't make something harder than what it really is. So every time, suggested don't make it any harder than what it really is, and so that's why it sure seems that way. That whenever something becomes too complicated and too hard, though, and a lot of times everybody else might even say that really that because you probably think it is toward it whenever something becomes to be so difficult, and you're going to be at 102 that okay, yeah, well, it seems like it wasn't so hard the second time or even the third time you tried. So a lot of times you're always 102 that whenever you're going to be learning a new task or working on something, it seems like everybody else might say that it seems like that it was a lot easier the second or maybe the third time you tried than compared to the first time you tried. So it's like, yeah, like almost every time you're always 102 that why is it that maybe after the fourth time you tried it seems to be a lot easier than compared to the first time you tried. But it's like, people may say that you may have better luck maybe the first time and the second time, but still, when we do speak about disability, though, that it's like I talk about for knowledge right here, and so that's why with me, though, that I kept thinking that when we do speak about disability a lot of times, it's like talk about for multitasking, and multitasking is multitasking, and also for those of the knowledge, for anything personal, for completing an important task and all that. So half the time, like everybody else might say that if you're going to be using any sorts of disability letter or anything about your disability, that it seems like to me that especially whenever it comes to multitasking, and of course problems with reading and writing and everything. So it's like, that when we do speak about disability, though, that you're pretty much are saying, according to your disability, that you have a lot of difficulties reading and writing, and talk about for what is so special. If you do require special attention, but still, but what's the key factor to remember here is to where that. People might say that if you want to include that on it, but yeah, that there is something something you do. There is something you do that that they need. So a lot of times it seems like that, like everybody else might even say that if you want to put that maybe in curly brackets or quotation marks or something. But yeah, that they'll give you that group of friends and all that. I'm like, yeah, they'll go ahead and give you the special treatment for sure. they'll give you the special treatment, for sure, if you're able to give them what they need. But still, it's like everybody else might say that, yeah, well, really, that, what is so special about that? And there's something that you do that they need. And so half the time, you always want to know, too, that, whenever you do, if you're going to be claiming to have a disability, though, it's like, yeah, well, really, that usually means special attention, right? And maybe special treatment, and maybe just another reason to where you don't have to worry about this, or you don't have to worry about doing this or doing that or something like that. But I think a lot of us will probably maybe agree that as to where your choice is yours. And yeah, like even if you are a senior citizen, you might even say that you look at your disability paperwork more like this right here, to where your choice is yours. And I can tell everybody here too that even if we are talking about maybe grandkids, maybe younger kids, between the ages of 5, 10, maybe 11, 12 years old, would say that if you claim to have a disability, that for sure, you're going to probably say that, you look at the paperwork, is more likely the choice is yours. And whenever it comes to getting the job done. And so I guess the doctors would probably say that, yeah, well, that's all right, but as long as the work is getting done, and then you find out about anything that you do like about what you were working with, and maybe anything that you didn't really that you did not like at all about what you were working with. But on the other hand too, that it's like every time we do speak about disability, though, that it's like every time I do think about that, I'm like, well, really, that you want to be like all the other cool kids, and want to be like learn just like everybody else, and you want to impress everybody else and with something, but still it. But at the time you want to they get so far as the call for the gift of kindness right here. So a lot of times a lot of that special treatment that I would say, I'm like, yeah. A lot of that special treatment that a lot of us would probably say that if you're going to be working with any special needs, or anybody any clients or anybody like that, and 102 that if we're talking about maybe the special gift of kindness or something like that, and a 102 that when do you usually see that source of reaction? And like everybody else might say that that's usually whenever they get what they've been waiting for most of the time. But so it's like, yeah, they're willing to give you they're willing to treat you special, really, whenever the overall expectation had been met, but still, at the same time, it's like, yeah, well, really, that if there's anything on that paperwork saying is toward that, yeah, the team is required by the state, or, by the program, toward that they go ahead and give you a gift of kindness, just for, just for answering the questions on the survey or something like that. But still, at the same time, it's like, yeah, please explain your disability. And it's like everybody else might say that yeah, what's the problem? Well, not too much of a problem, but, still, that if I'm going to be using the student accommodations, or if anything, from what the doctor said, is that whenever there's going to be, I'm like, yeah. So like the doctors could probably even say that if they're going to be writing you a letter, and telling telling the teacher or telling somebody that hey, go easy on the person, don't. If you're going to be giving them these assignments, to ask them to complete those assignments, at least what you can say is the choice is yours. And or something like, yeah, well, go easy on them. Treat them with kindness and respect, and okay, consistency. I'm like, oh yeah, for optional, but But I just really think though that in a lot of ways that do we maybe agree nearly 50% of the time that when we do speak about disability papers and disability information, disability forms, it's just another way of how to get. I'm like, yeah, it's another way of how to get other people to go a little bit more easier on you and just they kind of give you give you a little bit more space. And so a lot of times you might even think as to, yeah, well, really that since I won the prize last time, they need to give me the special treatment or something like that. So it sure seems that way almost all the time that whenever it comes to special treatment, especially that half the time you're always 102 that just because like everybody else might even say that just because of this, just because, and I can also put that on here too. Put that up here on the top. Just because. Yeah, I know it. Just because you had problems. You had problems. Just because you had problems reading or spelling. I'm like, yeah, I'll just put reading, but just because you had problems, and then you put on here, you explain your disability right here, but just because you had problems reading, and so it's like, yeah, so I guess but there, but see, there it goes right there, but anyway, so if you were to say something like that right there, and want to know too that yeah, so if you're going to be maybe doing text messages or something like that, but still that so it sure seems that way that if you're going to be thinking about disability paperwork a lot of times, that reading through you're going to maybe have it to where that maybe a complete sentence and about right here that's going to be talking about what your disability is right here, and it says toward the doctor had explained right here about my disability diagnosis, and that pretty much means is that go easy on the person, all right. You need to give them at least give them a little bit more time just to be able to work on a task, and saying normally 5 hours, but let's just say that you'll have it done in 8 hours, just because of the other things that you had to do, and so it sure seems that way that so if we would actually try to put this into like a math problem right here, and I want to know too that there's 5 hours, 5 hours and 5 days or so. So a lot of times it's like disability information right here. So it seems like it's all kind of all calculated about what you can handle a lot of times. But let's just say if you were to set a goal to where that you start working on something, and let's just say if you do have a good positive attitude, and knowing exactly how you want to work on something and how you want to do it. And let's just say that, do you think that you would have this ready in an hour? And like everybody else might say that, do you see any improvements whenever it comes to any sorts of disabilities, such as that, you don't really even have to have, you don't really even have to promise, but ready in an hour. Yeah, ready in 1 hour. So let's just say if you were to say something like that. Yeah, I'll have it ready in an hour. There's been other times that that you weren't done with it, even if it's been 5 hours and even 3 days, that you still weren't done with it. And so a lot of times everybody else might say that, how often are you really going to see accomplishments whenever it comes to working on a task? And like everybody else might say that, should you use the word "the choice is yours" whenever it comes to accomplishing something, such as maybe if it's a goal or achievement or something like that. And like everybody else might say that, whenever you do think about your disability a lot of times, that you might even think as toward it, one thing that really kind of keeps you motivated a lot of times and trying to keeps you active a lot of times is knowing as toward it, the amount of support that you get. So it sure seems that way that whenever you do think about your disability a lot of times, that you might think is toward it, well, really, that you have a lot more support now than what you did, from whenever you were first working hard, to achieve your goal, right? And so that's why it sure seems that way. That you always want to know too that everything seems to be a lot harder now than compared to later on. To where does it wind up getting easier later on? But still. But the way we think about though is that talk about for disability though, that when we do speak about disability though, that's another way of how you want to call it. It's like that power and the ability to where that you're able to look at that like kind of like citizenship, to where if you have it's just another like everybody else might say, if you want to kind of look at it, just maybe just a little bit, like it's another way to dismiss you from being tardy, like everybody else might say, is toward it, if you claim to have a disability, it's pretty much the same thing as toward it, they won't count you as tardy, as long as it don't happen. I'm like, if it's not a problem each and every week or so, if it don't happen too often or so. So it seems like to me that, all these rules and regulations and everything, but like everybody else might say, is that, do you think that on average is to where that if you can maybe say that on that disability paperwork is that the choice is yours whenever it comes to working on something? And you say that, if you say the choice is yours on it, that disability, paperwork though, then maybe that gives that person the ability to word, okay, that you can still work, do the work, right? But still, that you have options instead of requirements. And like everybody else might say that, you don't really look forward to hearing about the requirements all the time. So let's just say that whenever you first start working on something, that's the first thing that you're going to read right there is about the requirements. Of course, there's going to be requirements. There is going to be requirements, and there ain't no doubt about that. But let's just say that on average that people might say that, really about the requirements, that if there's going to be requirements that are going to be required, that you'll just be able to complete this, just to work on something, right? And you're one or two that, with those requirements. But on the other hand, that you can go ahead and get special assistance, and of course anybody there that to be able to help you out with what needs to be done, right? And but then at the same time, it sure seems that way that when we do speak about the requirements, that it's like rules and going by for what needs to be done. And that's why it sure seems that way, that every time we do speak about disability, that there might be some the special treatment and everything, like everybody else might even say that disability paperwork, hasn't that really always been about the fact about to give you more time, if anything, and don't be so hard on the person, rather than think about maybe a few other things. Like everybody else might say that, don't think about disability paperwork as to where that allow it to where you can skip. And I don't know if everybody is thinking that really, but don't think like everybody else may say that disability. Disability does not mean that you can skip. You can skip these. You can skip those steps. You can skip those steps. What does that look like? What does that look like with no spaces? I'm like, that looks like a certain character, doesn't it? Everybody else might say, skip those steps right there. The choice is yours, okay? Yeah, you can go ahead and skip it. Just one time, you can skip that just one time, but the next time you gotta make sure you go back and you go ahead and work on that. And so it sure seems that way. Like everybody else might say that skip these steps, skip those steps, and if you put that all just one word right there and want to know that certain characters. And like anybody say, yeah, what exactly is it that really teaches anybody really? But I just really think that in a lot of ways that when we do speak about disability a lot of times, that yeah, when we do speak about disability, that it's another way of how do you want to cause is toward it. Yeah, well, really, whenever you first start working on something, it sure seems that way. Yeah, well, you may not even have to worry about all those tardies or maybe about the fact about it that maybe it's not going to be so hard just because that you are receiving disability, through the disability service or something like that, and but really everybody else might even say, even on your tax papers, though, that if you have a disability, for sure, that if you want to look at that, is toward it maybe receiving special service, special attention by those who are willing to support, so show support, right? But I just really think that the key factor, remember, is just to know is like yeah, the choice is yours. And I just really think that, yeah, just kind of keep that in mind about the choice is yours. That you go ahead and set right here toward it. 3 weeks and 5 hours. You're ready in an hour. So let's just say that everybody else might say is toward it. Yeah, if you were to write down a task on what you think that I'm like, yeah, reading a book or something like that. Yeah, reading reading a book, reading a story, something like that. Reading a story. We're reading a story, and do you think that yeah, ready in an hour? Y'all have it ready in an hour or something like that, or maybe yeah, print copies or something like that. But still, that whenever you do start working on something, and it's possible that you may not realize that okay, yeah, it's going to take a little bit longer than what you originally thought that it was going to take, but like everybody else might say that whenever you first start working on something, it sure seems that way. That yeah, most of the time it may seem like, okay, yeah, that should only take me 15-20 minutes to do that, but then if it does wind up taking you a little bit longer just to be able to work on it, and that's why it sure seems that way. That everybody else might even say that really, how do you know for sure how long it's going to take you before that you know that you're done with it? And people might say that yeah, usually whenever you're halfway there, and everybody else might say that that's usually what happens whenever when you're halfway. When you're halfway, when you're halfway done with working on something, that's usually how you know that you'll be done. You'll be done. You'll be done in an hour. And so usually, like everybody else might say, that the choice is yours. More mainly, over the fact about is toward it whenever they actually see progress, and whenever you're halfway done, and you're halfway and done right here. So, yep. So that's why it sure seems that way. That when we do think about the disability paperwork and everything, and want to know that hey, that talk about for the grateful for all the knowledge that that we were able to learn, and even when times did get rough, and so a lot of times it's like, yeah, you look at your disability letter right there, and at 102 that yeah, well, really. How do you know if you're ready for this, or maybe if you can handle this and handle that? Well, I'm like, it sure seems that way. That you know, if you have a little bit more help with getting something done, that makes a real big difference there. And like everybody else might say that, yeah, if you have more support and of course assistance, if you have a lot more assistance with working on something, for sure, that it'll go a lot faster. And that's why it seems like everybody else might say that whenever you do explain about your disability, but half the time everybody else might say that yeah, does everybody really even need to know the details about that? Like, and well, we're just curious to know. But still, at the same time, it sure seems that way, that every time you do think about that, and I want to know too that, yeah, well, you look at your disability, it's supposed to be what you call, talent, like, the gift of kindness, right? To where that there's something that somebody was able to see, that maybe something that you didn't realize that you had. And so I say to talk about for progress, so don't we think that maybe that's what disability, should be? I'm like, yeah, about the progress. And people are able to see progress. And whenever they see progress and knowing is to where they, yeah, well, like the way how you work on it, how you do things. And so that's why it sure seems that way, that whenever you do set a goal and achievement, just know it is to where that what's one thing that you look forward to is just knowing about it, is that, yeah, your choice is yours. And so the way I think about too, that knowing about what all that you can learn, right? Anybody talk about for knowing about for the gift of kindness, and know about for understanding about the disability. Thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.